Hi, Mr. W. How are you today?
Doing all right.
Good. So, Mr. W, I'm Jared. I'm a student physical therapist today, working under Dr. Sykes. So, I heard you had a little bit of a stroke.
That's correct.
Okay. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to test the range of motion of your neck and your back, as well as the strength in those areas. And to do that, I'll be needing to place my hands on your neck and your lower back region. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Sure.
Okay. And then also, to best be able to see the structures and the muscles moving, it's best if you can remove your shirt. Would you be okay with that today?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
do that.
So I'll go ahead and grab the goniometers, or the inclinometers that we need for this first test, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So the first test, what we're going to do is we're going to be testing cervical extension. So to do that, what I want you to do is just look up to the ceiling as high as much as you can, okay? So look up. Is that as far as you can go?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna apply just a little bit of pressure. Okay, good. Now back down. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put the dual inclinometers, and the normal range of motion for this should be 75 degrees to 80 degrees. I'm gonna put one on the crown of your head. Can you just go ahead and look down for me?
Sure.
Thank you. And then we'll zero them out. Okay. And we're putting them on the crown of the head and right at the C7 vertebrae. Okay. And then go ahead and look up to the ceiling as much as you can, Mr. W. Okay. So 45 and 15. So we're going to have about 30 degrees. So he is limited in that. And then for the next test, what we're going to do is, Mr. W, I know you just had your stroke, so we're going to be very careful when we're doing this. But we're going to have you stand up, and then I'm going to have you go ahead and in real life, depending on how stable I felt like he was, I probably wouldn't be performing the lumbar extension, or I would definitely have somebody helping me measure or helping me make sure he was safe and not falling. So we'll go ahead and have you stand up, assuming that he can do this, and then go through a couple steps forward. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and measure from his T12 to his S2 vertebrae. And we're just going to be measuring first and see what we get. Would you mind just pulling your shorts down just a little bit? Okay, good. And then so I got 10 centimeters to start. And now I want you to go ahead and lean back as far as you can safely. So, and now I've got 8 centimeters. And normal range of motion of the lumbar vertebrae extension is 15 to 30 degrees. Okay, Mr. W, so now that you're on the table, we're going to do our next test, which is going to be a manual muscle test. And to do that, what we would normally do for the cervical extension test is he would normally be supine, and he would have his head come off the table, and I would be supporting it. And then he would lift the back of his head straight up, and then I'd apply resistance down, cueing him to hold that. But since he does have a stroke, and in class we talked about if you don't think that the patient can hold their head up, then we're just not gonna have them bring their head off the table. So in this case, we would start him in the alternate position for a 2 or a 1. And so for that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna place our hands kind of in his occiput region. And Mr. W, is it okay if I put my hands there?
Sure.
So we're just going to be feeling back here. And so what I want you to do is just go ahead and push your head straight into the table. And in this case, we're going to be feeling for, is the pressure more than double his weight of his head? And in this case, he's not doing that. So we're just feeling for those muscle contractions. And one of those muscles that we are doing is the semispinalis cervicis, which has an origin on the upper transverse vertebrae and then, or on the transverse processes of the upper T vertebrae into the middle cervical region on the spinous processes. And then for the last one, we're going to be testing his trunk extension. And for this one, we're going to have him supine. And in this case, we're just going to assume that he can get into that position. Like I said, with a stroke, he might not be able to. But for demonstration purposes, we'll have him go onto his stomach. Thank you, Mr. W. Okay, and so the muscles we're going to be testing here is one of them is going to be the erector spinae, which insert kind of on a common tendon on our lower back, and they insert kind of in the ribs and the transverse processes. In this part, we're going to be specifying more on the lumbar, but it does run all the way up the spine. And so for this, we're going to have his hands by his side. I'm going to be holding his legs, and Mr. W, go ahead and lift your belly button off the table if you can. Okay, good. And come down. And in that case, even though he didn't get his belly button off the table, he did come up in one fluid motion. If he came up kind of choppy, he would be a 4 out of 5, and that's with this specific lumbar extension is all we're going to be testing.